authors, I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode.
Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with S.J. Butler, and we're chatting on how to write authentic historical fiction, how reading inspires a work of writing, cost and gaining permissions to use quotes by other authors in the genre, writing courses, self-publishing, SJ's tips, her book, and more. And I must make mention, we're not promoting any services in this upcoming interview. SJ simply shares her experience of where she undertook writing courses and got help publishing her work. We're not promoting the services she mentions. As always, I advise you do your own research into any industry professional before investing in them. Unless I otherwise obviously recommend someone because, I've used them myself or something like that. But in terms of who SJ has gone through with her publishing, I haven't heard of them before. I haven't gone through. It's just a conversation, and also the writing courses and things like that. So the Society of Authors and Ally, which is the Alliance of Independent Authors, are good watchdog services. So you can go to their websites and check out their information on the legitimacy of players within the industry. If there is someone you've come across who is a hybrid publisher or a self-publisher or someone who does writing courses or things like that, you can maybe check these services out on these reliable sources within the author sphere. So in my author adventure this week, it's school holidays. So if you are a writer and a parent, you know what that means. Not a whole lot of work gets done. It depends on the age of your children really, but your workload definitely slows down. And to be honest, so it should. Spending time with the kidlets is equally important, and getting yourself out there and enjoying life will give your work, your writing a freshness. And it'll also expand your experiences to write about. So myself and the kids took a trip to Mandurah. For anybody who's familiar with Mandurah, it's about an hour and a bit outside of Perth, which is where we live. I honestly haven't spent that much time down there, but it's really worth going. There's a lot to do and see there. It's a beautiful place, and there's a lot of free stuff too, but there's just really, really good things. And we went down to visit family that was down there. We went to see the miniature place, so we went to the miniature maze park, it was called. There wasn't as much miniature stuff as I thought there was going to be, but the little train sets going around in old England houses and things like that, it was cute. And it was very hot here yesterday. It was into the 30s, so we're definitely, spring is upon us, summer is rearing round, and I'm looking forward to both. So, I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, it's gone a bit cloudier today, but so it was nice to take that trip and drive down and drive back, and we went to the beach and had a barbecue and just stuff like that. It's in even a day, I feel so, I don't know, usually day trips are really great. They can refresh you, inject a refreshness into you without having to go on a week's holiday or a weekend. You can really, there's a lot to be said about just having a day trip and experiencing something new. It's definitely something I want to do more of. Time is limited and precious. So we haven't been doing too much. There's still another week to go of school holidays. I've been very aware of just letting the kids rest and mostly just catch up with their friends over the holidays, not really planning a holiday after that big caravan escapade that we went on. So in terms of my writing, I'm still plugging away at the women's fiction, and I have completed Act 2, moving on to Act 3 next week. This project, I'm going to be sharing more about it in the coming weeks, more about its story, more about where it's come from, and the experiences I've had with working on this project this year. So with writing, that's my main writing project at the moment. Marketing efforts. I have been busy these last couple of weeks marketing my non-fiction books, Freelance Writing, Quick Tips for Fast Success, and Author Fears and How to Overcome Them. These two books are part of a series that I call Author Linings, which is Silver Linings for Authors. There is another book in that. It's a 5-book series. I'm hoping to get the third book in that series out by the end of the year. It's just time. It's just blooming October this weekend. Time is crazy, but I'll do a lot of reflecting in future episodes, and I'll be able to see how much I have achieved and how much I've done this year, and I know it's been a lot. So yeah, the marketing efforts are slowly still happening this week and trickling in. I'm selling books to libraries, so there's a lot going on there. I'm just plugging away at one thing at a time because that's all I have the capacity to do. One project writing, one marketing of my current list of books that I have, and also still submitting the children's fiction to traditional publishing houses. There's been a couple that are coming to a close in September this week, so I've just sort of managed to slide them in there. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. That is really my working model at the moment, is how I run my business. I seem to not be taking part in social media as much as I have done in the past. It seems to be I'm putting out the podcast and then say one other post. I haven't been really up to date on what's happening with events and stuff like that. I'm sure there's lots of book launches, lots of things happening. As if you listened a few weeks back, I was kind of going out to some stuff, but I've kind of had my head down these last couple of weeks and just been getting on with my own stuff really. So I'm very excited and pleased to announce the third sponsor of the Hybrid Author podcast is Nicole Webb Book Publicity. Nicole has represented romance, suspense and alpine crime author Lee Christine, who appeared on the podcast for episode 77. It's never too late to turn lifelong dreams into reality. And Nicole is also the publicist for the upcoming episode with S.J. Butler. Nicole is an author herself, so she gets what she's marketing and she's got a wealth of experience within the media industry, but I will let her tell you herself and then on with the interview.
Hello, my name's Nicole Webb and I'm the owner of Nicole Webb Book Publicity. I'm originally a journalist and a newsreader with over 30 years experience in the media. My memoir, China Blonde, was published in 2020 and I'm now working on a novel set in Singapore. In the past 2 years, I've completed more than 20 successful author book publicity campaigns. Promoting your book can feel like a daunting task. So if you want help planning your book publicity path, I'd love to help you. If you need a compelling media release and someone to pitch you and your book to the media, or perhaps you want some media training to ensure you're confident when discussing your book, then let's talk. From consultations through to full marketing campaigns, I design tailored strategies to suit your needs and to target your book to its specific audience. You can check out my website, www.nicolewebonline.com, for more details.
S.J. Butler was born in London, England, and grew up writing poetry in the Essex countryside. After leaving school, she turned down a place at university and instead bought a ticket to Australia for £75, courtesy of the Australian government. She planned to hang out in Australia for 2 years before returning to England and uni, but then met and married her husband in Australia shortly after arriving. Raising 3 children, working in the fields of education and human resources management, and sitting in more cold basketball stadiums than she cares to remember, S.J. Butler graduated from university in her 50s, but her dream was always to become a published author. A Very British Disaster, which is a historical fiction based on a true story during the very first Anglo-Afghan war in 1838, is the realisation of that dream. Amazing. Welcome to the Hybrid Author podcast, Steph.
Thank you.
That is a very colourful bio, but we'll start. If you can just let us know, how did you come to be a writer? It sounds like it was from quite a young age.
Yes, I've always wanted to write a book. It was on my bucket list, along with eventually going to uni. I guess it started, as I said, with science fiction stories. I was an avid reader of, I don't know if you've heard of them, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury, those, I guess, science fiction authors of the sort of mid-1900s, and then graduated to writing poetry, but that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
The genesis of this book, I guess, was when I read Flashman by George MacDonald Fraser. He was a fictitious character in Tom Brown's School Days, which was written by Thomas Hughes in 1857. And according to Hughes, Flashman was expelled from school for drunkenness and banished to India, British India, where he joined the staff of the general in charge of the army about to invade Afghanistan. And I've told you all that because that's when, in my reading, I got to the idea of a book that perhaps I could write.
Wow.
I don't really know why I thought that, but, you know, that's when the idea began to emerge. So in my copy of Flashman, George MacDonald Fraser refers readers to Patrick McCrory's account and also Lady Sale's Journal of the Disasters in Afghanistan and several others. Those books are sort of where I started to read and research with this idea in my mind that I could write a book. That's where it began.
Yeah. How long ago was this then?
Long time. Over a decade.
Wow.
Over a decade. Yeah.
So you started reading these works and then obviously was getting a germ of an idea, and it was quite inspirational about a decade ago. And take us through the process from there. Did you kind of put it down? Obviously you had a family and things like that and you were busy working.
Yes.
And
Yes, well, let's say a little bit more than a decade. Yes, it sort of came in fits and starts. I developed quite a passion for writing this book, which I think is a good thing for an author.
Yes.
But I have to say, writing is quite an isolating thing. You tend to not want people around you when you're writing. Well, that's the way I felt anyway, which is difficult when when you've got a family and obviously you want to spend time with them and be part of the family, and then on the other hand you've got the writing, which you're also passionate about, but lots and lots of reading before I actually started. And then once I've started, many drafts before it sort of got anywhere, right, to the point where it was readable. I felt it was sort of readable and was hitting the mark.
Yeah, well, we are chatting about writing authentic historical fiction today.
Yes.
And, so can you dive into your book, and tell us a bit about it and how you've made sure, you've kept the work, stayed true to the authentic voice?
Well, that's what I've tried to do. I guess the reader will be the judge of that. I think not only the research into the actual events of the first Afghan War, the events leading up to it and immediately after it when the hostages were rescued and so on. I think when you're writing historical fiction, it's also important to get across the day-to-day business of, in this case, living in the 1840s, which is, sort of quite a challenge, I think.
Quite different from today.
Yes, it is very different. Certainly, for instance, certainly in India at the time, which is where the armies essentially came from to invade Afghanistan at that time, there was no rail transport in that sense, and this is just an example that the fastest that things could move was the speed of a man on horseback.
Wow.
So news travelled relatively slowly, what we'd consider to be quite slowly, and that had to be accounted for in the novel, which was tricky. I had to set up timelines so that everything gelled in terms of when people were sending letters, receiving letters, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Something you don't really think about, isn't it?
Yeah. Medicine was another issue in terms of what was around in those days in the way of medicinal treatments and so on. I remember reading during my research that there was a brief period in the middle of the 1800s when rich people per capita were actually dying at a faster rate than poor people from preventable illnesses, what we would call preventable illnesses. This was because rich people could afford doctors and poor people couldn't. And the doctors were killing the rich people with their sort of treatments which did nothing or did damage.
Like experimental treatments or something?
Yeah, well, yes, and with no knowledge behind them, with scientific knowledge. So Lady Sale, with her medicine chest, probably did just as well as the doctor. Those kinds of things, which this is the knowledge that comes to you while you're reading, that you're not even looking for. You just encounter it as you read and you store it up. And one of the things I've learned is that I have to take, if I'm to write another one, another novel of a sort of similar genre, I have to record all my sources, exactly where I read it, so that I can go back to it, because in this particular book, I would remember that I'd read it, but I wouldn't be able to remember where I'd read it or who had said it.
Oh, goodness me, because you had read so much?
Yes, and because this was my first book, I wasn't sort of fully across, research in that sense, and the level that I had to document to go back to things when I needed to. Yeah, so that added time to the novel. Yeah,
I bet. So it sounds like even just with those fine details that you've shared, and you can imagine there would be so much that you would have to account for in a historical fiction novel to keep it authentic. Would you say, and obviously it took quite a while for the work to eventuate, would you say the research was took you more than the actual time of writing the work, or was it very much the same?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I wrote there were so many drafts. I really did this book through trial and error. I had done no creative writing courses, nothing to prepare me for this. It was all just by, what I thought was best at the time. And I think, it just all took a really long time.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about a second book, so it must have been a good experience.
Yeah, I do enjoy writing, so I'd like to get another one underway.
Yeah, and I think obviously applying the things that you've learned now, even just absolutely. That tip there saying to cite your work and where you get it from.
I've now done a couple of short courses. I'm sure I can give them a plug with the Australian Writers Centre, one or two with the Australian Society of Authors. So I kind of feel a bit better prepared, and also a bit assured, because a lot of what I've learned is from the courses, is what I learned from writing my first book.
Absolutely. Well, the caliber of the writing in your book is outstanding. So what were the courses that you took? Is it more along the historical fiction line, about just having a better workflow?
Well, bear in mind, I didn't do any of those courses before I wrote the book. No. I've done the courses since. No, one of them that I'm actually currently doing is plotting and planning with the Australian Writers Centre.
Yep.
Because what I didn't do, again, with this novel is plot it or plan it. We live and learn. So
no, that's good.
Hopefully the next one won't take me as long.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think everyone's first book is an absolute learning curve, and each one that precedes that. But no, it sounds like and especially working with, we're big fans of the ASA and the Australian Writers Centre on this podcast. So it sounds like you're in the right place. So the book itself, there was some quotes in there, wasn't there, throughout the book?
Yes.
Did you have to? How did you have to get permission to use them through Copyright Council or anything?
I didn't realise that until I had started working with Broadcast Book and Bernadette Foley. So as soon as I realised that I needed to do that, I sort of, got on with it. And for anybody who's read the book, for the William Dalrymple quotes, I had to get permission from Bloomsbury in the UK.
Right.
For a price. But the Patrick McCrory quotes were a bit more challenging, because I eventually found out that the rights to his work had reverted to the family, and I was fortunate enough to be able to identify a family member online and get in touch with him, and he was kind enough to give me permission to use the quotes.
Oh, that's great.
So that was a relief, because to my mind, those quotes were integral to the book, the way I'd written it. And as far as the quotes of the older sources were concerned, the contemporaneous ones, I didn't need any permission for those, because they're well out of copyright, of course.
Right, yeah.
That was, another piece of work that I sort of had to undertake in order to get the book published. And also the image on the front of the book. I had to go to the National Army Museum in the UK for permission to use that.
Wow.
Again, at a cost.
Like a lot? Or not so much? Or?
I think it was about, I can't recall exactly, I think it was about £300, something like that.
Wow. Yeah, that still seems a lot.
Yeah, and what I had wanted to do was, at the National Army Museum, there are images of a lot of these people in portraits and so forth. And I wanted to put those portraits in the book, but it just would have been too expensive. If I was William Dalrymple, I could have afforded to do that. But no, so that sort of went out the window.
Oh, that's crazy. Historical fiction scares me just because there sounds like there's so many elements to it. You know, it's not just a case of just writing the book, and there just seems like there's so much, and especially to keep it authentic and correct, and permissions, and it's a big undertaking. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So you mentioned broadcast books. Are you able to tell us about them? You know, how you came across them, or what's your experience publishing with them?
So I decided to go with self-publishing so that I could keep control over some of the aspects of the novel, and I knew it was a bit niche and a little bit quaint. And I wanted to keep that flavour. And I was a bit concerned that, you know, had I marketed it or tried to market it to a publishing house, that they would have wanted me to sort of change it or go down paths that I didn't really want to go down. So I did an online course on self-publishing through the ASA, and that was hosted by Bernadette Foley from Broadcast Books.
Right, yeah.
And after the course, I contacted her and we went from there. I certainly found the process of publishing more challenging than writing.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes,
how so?
Purely because I love to write. And publishing to me was just if I was to get the book out, it was sort of a necessary evil, you know.
Yeah, that's it. Well, broadcast books, are they just a service that will teach you how to self-publish rather than, are they an actual self-published provider?
Yes, they help you to publish the book. They actually, Bernadette has a lot of knowledge and experience in the field. There was, obviously it went through a copy editing process, and that was done by a lady called Sylvia. And that was all. I didn't mind that. That was quite fun and I learned a lot through doing that in terms of point of view in a novel and all those aspects of writing that, of course, I didn't know because I hadn't done any, you know, I had no qualifications in writing or experience in writing a novel. So I learned a lot from Bernadette and Sylvia. It was also of benefit because nobody else had read this at this stage, and Bernadette was the first person to read it, and actually as somebody who hadn't seen it before, and actually approach it critically and give me feedback and make some suggestions and advice and so on. So that was good. And I was very pleased when the copy editor found the bits in the book humorous that I had written to be humorous. That was kind of reassuring because humour's a very individual thing, and it's always a risk, you know.
Yeah, it's good that
with humour that you're going to, it's going to fall flat or, you know.
That's it. Good that, you know, they picked up on the quotes as well. That's something that a good editor can do.
Yes, that's right. Essentially, that's where it went, and I just worked with Bernadette, and we got there in the end.
So they do the editing and things like that. Were you in charge of doing the cover, and did they provide that service as well?
No, we had a cover design
image.
And I also had some help with setting up my website. I never ever thought I would have a website, but there you go. And so look, I got a lot of help getting it over the line. And I'm very grateful for that. I could probably have got there in the end, but it was, you know, much better for me to have that help and advice.
Yeah, especially starting out. Yeah, no, that's it. That's good. You've had that experience. So you've mentioned a few tips already with writing historical fiction. Do you have any more tips you want to share with authors that are sort of starting out writing historical fiction to keep it authentic, or just any self-publishing advice that you think, well, you know, next time you're not gonna do? Lessons learned.
Yes, look, I think you can't get away from research if you're writing historical fiction. There's no way around it if you want it to strike the reader as authentic. The one thing that doesn't change is human nature, feelings, emotions, and I think the trick is to combine the two, the historical context with human feelings and emotions that are just as real then as they are today. And it's the environment and the way people may express their feelings that's changed. I read a lot of, throughout my life, I've read a lot of Dickens and Austen and writers of that calibre. So I had a sense for the language and the way they express themselves and so on. And I think that probably helped in writing historical fiction, but you don't want to get carried away and make it unreal for the reader. The reader's still got to be able to identify with what's being said and what's being felt by the characters.
Great advice.
I think that's about it.
Yep. And would you suggest working with a third sort of party like you have with Broadcast Books to get you through the self-publishing line? Do you think that's a good way for people to go, or it's just self-choice?
As I said, I might have come up with a product by myself, but I don't think it would be what it is without the advice and guidance that I got from Bernadette and Sylvia, the copy editor.
Yeah, amazing.
Also the learning, I think, because I learnt through the copy editing process right up to when it was published, I was learning and applying that learning sort of, right up until the point when it was finished and had gone off to the publishing, the printing place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And so you're now on your marketing adventure with the book, A Very British Disaster. Yes. Do you have plans for the second one? Are you going to sit down and get cracking on that soon, or at the moment you're just enjoying?
Well, I've already started sort of thinking about it. And that sounds, I know that sounds a bit like I'm prevaricating, and I might be.
No, that's where it begins.
I've always found that you do need to spend a bit of time mulling over things. What you're going to, who your characters are going to be. Without sort of giving a whole heap away because it might come to nothing, I'm sort of sticking to that period pretty much in an English setting, not anything to do with India or, Afghan wars or anything like that.
Yeah.
So a bit of a change, but still the historical genre.
Fantastic. Well, it all sounds amazing. Can you tell our listeners, Steph, where they can, discover A Very British Disaster and learn more about your upcoming work and yourself?
Yes, I can tell you that if you go to my website, which is sjbutlerauthor.com, you can read about the book and you can buy it from me, or you can buy it from on Amazon, Copia and other online booksellers. That's about the extent of where it is at the moment. I'm still in the process of marketing, so that could change. But look, yes, if you go to either the booksellers or my website, you can get a copy. You can get an ebook if you go to the online booksellers. Yes, however you prefer to read.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise today. It's been so interesting to hear about how the book came to be and, your adventure through bringing it out into the world. And we wish you all the best for the next one.
Thank you very much.
So there you have it, folks. The truly knowledgeable S.J. Butler. Her book, A Very British Disaster, while being quite niche, it's extremely well executed. It's a must-have for anyone interested in reading good writing and this type of story. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have returning guest to the show, children's fiction indie author Christy Nita Bryan. And Christy is sharing all on workshopping in libraries, which is big interest to children's authors and anybody looking to get into the library system to set up a workshop. It's a good way to make money as an author by putting yourself out there to workshop. So Christy's here to tell us how. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. It's bye for now.
That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.